second session of Unit 4. In this session, we are looking at models of curriculum design. Let's look at the objectives for the session. By the end of this session, you should be able to explain each of the following curriculum design models: the 4-step process of Thales model, the Wheeler's cyclical model, Taber's model, and Kerr's model. In our previous session, we looked at 4 ways of approaching curriculum theory, and we talked about curriculum as a body of knowledge to be transmitted, curriculum as a process, curriculum as a product, and curriculum as a practice. With more understanding about the nature of learning and the learner, educators perceive curriculum broadly as began to develop relatively more comprehensive designs for curriculum planning. So curriculum developers make use of curriculum theory a lot, and they normally use comprehensive designs when planning the curriculum. Curriculum models are designed to analyze and understand better the nature and process of curriculum. So to understand the nature and process of curriculum developers, teachers, and implementers in general use curriculum models. And in this session, we shall be looking at 4 of such models. We shall look at Thales model, which basically is, we can say, is the starting point of the models. And then we look at Wheeler's model, we look at Taber's model, and then finally we look at Kerr's model. So let's take them one by one and look at what each of them stands for. Thales model. So this model was developed by Ralph Tyler in 1949 based on his 4 questions. He asked 4 questions and then translated those questions into what is now referred to as Thales model. And the 4 questions that he sought answers for include: what educational purposes should the school seek to attain? What educational experiences can be provided that are likely to attain these purposes? How can these educational experiences be effectively organized? And how can we determine whether these purposes are being attained? So these 4 questions were asked by Ralph Tyler, and from these 4 questions, the models were developed. So therefore, let's look at the models in detail. These questions, that's a simple 4-step process for planning and developing curriculum was derived. So from the 4 questions that he asked, a simple 4-step process was, and they are, as you can see on the screen. So the first step is objectives. So what Tyler saying is that in planning or developing a curriculum, the first thing you should look at is objectives. What objectives do you seek to attain? Then the second one is selection of learning. The learning that should be, done. Selection of them. Then organization of learning. So we can look at the selection of learning and organization of learning to mean the subject matter or the content of the curriculum. And then how do you evaluate? How do you assess that the objectives have been achieved? Then that talks about evaluation. So for him, it's a simple 4-step model, starting from objectives, then you go to the content, selection of the content, organization of the content, and then finally you evaluate the content. So this is basically the Thales model, which was developed by Ralph Tyler in 1949. So from his model, we can see that the model is a linear one. So it starts from objectives and ends with evaluation. So it's linear in nature. And the objectives is the most crucial step in his model. So he stressed on objectives because, according to him, it is from the objectives that the other, steps are taken from. So from the objectives, we go to the selection of learning. So it is based on the objectives that the other parts of the model are developed. So hence the model is sometimes referred to as the objective model because he placed a crucial it placed an emphasized on objectives as a crucial step in the model. So according to him, educational objectives represent the kinds of changes in behavior that the school seeks to bring about in the pupils. Then objectives stand out as very basic, as I've already said, and then followed by the others, and evaluation based on the objectives. So the evaluation is to measure whether the objectives have been achieved or not. This model is considered as the traditional model of curriculum design. So basically, he started the whole curriculum theory stuff, and this model it is based on this model that the others came out with their models. For example, the one we are going to look at next, we look at how he built on Thales' model to come up with their models. But aside that, there were some criticisms, and it is based on this criticism that others developed their models. So they look at the criticisms and fill in the gaps to come out with other models which they refer to using their own terms. So one criticism of his model is that it leaves evaluation to the last stage of the process. So some argue that evaluation should be part of all the steps, not at the final step of the process. So they see that as a loophole, a gap to be filled. And then they also said it's a static curriculum process, which means it has no room for dynamism. That's changes. And as we looked at in our previous session, we said that society is dynamic. So one criticism of his model is that it's static in nature and does not create room for changes. And they also said this thing is too simple. His model is too simple and does not make sufficient allowance for the interaction and interrelatedness of the separate elements. So according to his critics, they say that all his steps are independent. They are not related with each other. There's no interaction between the steps. So objectives is standing on its own. Selection of learning, organization, evaluation, they are all separate entities. So these are the four criticisms that his critics talk about. And based on these criticisms, others came out to fill the gap and develop their own model. So let's look at Taba's model. It was proposed by Taba in 1962. So Tyler was in 1949. Then in 1962, Taba came with the model. And he perceives the curriculum as having the elements, aims and objectives, content, learning experiences, and evaluation. So Taba perceived the objectives to be in that form. And this is basically Taba's model, as you can see on the screen. So it's also a four-step model, but it's not linear as in Thales' model. So you have objectives, learning experiences, content, and evaluation. So just change of name and change of style. So Tyler was linear, but this one we can see how it is going. So let's look at critical aspect of the Taba's model. The model is basically the same as Thales, as we have said. Like Tyler, Taba also emphasized the vital importance of objectives, just like Tyler did. However, Taba made content clearly visible. So in Tyler's model, the content was not clear unless we say that selection and organization of learning is somewhere related to content. She also emphasized the fact of interrelatedness or relationship among the elements. So you see the way the elements were connected in that order, and to fill the gap or the criticism that were leveled against the model of Tyler. So basically, that is what Taba's model is. It's just trying to fill the gap in Thales' model, and then came out with that model where there was interrelatedness or connection between the elements of the model. Then came Wheeler in 1967, and also an improvement on Thales' model, as I said earlier on, and it basically improved on the simplicity and the linearity of Thales' model. So one of Some of the criticisms of Thales' model was that it was too simple and it was linear, and Wheeler took advantage of those and developed his model. So he improved on that. So he converted Thales' original ideas into a cyclic form. So instead of the linear form, he converted the model into cyclic form and offers a 5-stage. So he added one more stage to his to make it a 5-stage model of curriculum process. The cyclic nature makes his model continuous process. So, in cyclic form, it's continuous. So instead of linearity, he proposed a cyclic nature. And as you can see on the screen, this is his model and it is cyclic in nature. So start with aims, goals, and objectives, followed by selection of learning experiences, selection of content, organization and integration of learning experiences, and then evaluation, and then come back to aims, goals, in that order, cyclic nature. So it's a continuous nature or continuous form, as you can see. You may pause the video and look at the components critically. And then finally, let's look at Kerr's model. And it was propounded by Kerr in 1968. And he basically classified curriculum into 4 areas: objectives, knowledge, school learning experiences, and evaluation. And his model is given as you can see on the screen. So the first one is objectives, followed by knowledge, followed by school learning experiences, and evaluation. And you can see critically how the components are interrelated. So you see the connection between them as shown in the diagram. The components are not separate, they are not individual, but they are what? Interrelated. So it just built on the loopholes in Thales' model to come out with this particular model. So let's look at some key components of his model. He emphasized in his model that everything influences everything else. So as I said, the components are interrelated. However, he singles out objectives as very important. So just like Tyler, the other propounders also looked at objectives as very important. And as we have looked at in our previous lessons, we know how important objectives are in the instructional delivery. He understood objectives as changes in people's behavior. Specify the learner, society, and disciplines as the source of objectives. So the sources of objectives should come from the individual, society, and disciplines, according to Carroll. And he classified objectives under cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domains. So basically, these are the 4 models of curriculum design. And we have come to the end of this session. And I'll leave you with this question. You try your hands on them, and when we meet, if you have any concern, we address them.